Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning meeting. I'm Mark Halperin. Lots going on today. From dawn to dusk, the White House is promoting the president's record in the first 100 days. Gentlemen, welcome to the first 100 days episode. Sean, how would you describe your emotions?
I cried a little this morning, a little overwhelmed, verklempt. It's a mix of emotions.
Okay, Dan?
Excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. We have 1,300 more to go. And speaking of big days, Mr. Halperin, how are you feeling today? You have something coming up later?
I will. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's go live to the White House briefing room where Caroline Leavitt and Scott Bessent are talking in a briefing that started about half an hour ago.
President Trump's leadership, that Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune are united. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with somebody called the Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. It is going to give permanence to the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act, which will, back to the question on certainty, it will give American business certainty, it will give American people certainty, and then President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis. And the other thing that I would note, and back to data, is that the Vanguard, one of the largest money management firms in America, said that over the past 100 days, 97% of Americans haven't done a trade. And in fact, individual investors have held tight while institutional investors have panicked. So individual investors trust in.
Okay, we'll monitor this.
Oh boy, that is a stretch what he just said.
Yeah, we'll monitor this. Earlier in the briefing, Scott Bessent was bullish on a trade deal with India. He said he thought that might be the first one, that suggested that might be the first one to come through. And Caroline Leavitt responded very negatively to a report this morning that Amazon is planning to display on their pricing the amount of the price that comes from the increased tariffs. So we'll keep monitoring that. Again, big day for messaging from the White House, particularly on the economy. Starting with the briefing at 8:30, the president's doing an interview with ABC News' Terry Moran that will air. He'll tape this after this morning, and then it will air tonight on ABC at 8 o'clock, also on Hulu in case you're interested. And then most of the president's day involves a trip to Michigan with two speeches, one at 4:10 at the Michigan National Guard at the Selfridge Air National Guard base.
Which is why Gretchen Whitmer was in the Oval Office, right, by the way. So hats tip to Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if she's at the event today celebrating with the president. And then at 6 o'clock, the president's scheduled to give an hour-long speech. We'll see if it's an hour on a, quote, 100th day in office achievement speech in Macomb County. That will likely look like a rally, and then he heads back. Don't know what the vice president's doing today. Congress in session. The two House and Senate, or House Democrats and Republicans meeting at this hour. There'll be leadership press conferences, Republicans at 10, Democrats at 10:45. The senators are having their separate party lunches today, and at 2:15, the Progressive Caucus goes before the cameras to talk about the first 100 days, led by their chair, how do you pronounce his name? Kassar? How do you pronounce that guy's name? I don't know. Greg Kassar, I believe. All right. So on the question of the economy, which is the main messaging the White House is engaged in right now with Scott Bessent, the White House this morning, 103, put out a press release on the Trump economy, celebrating it as a great achievement so far, with happier days even to come. And the next email that came into my inbox, 104, came from the Democrat allied group American Bridge, which said that the first 100 days was chaos, betrayal, and failure. So let's start there. Dan, how would you describe the Trump economic record after 100 days?
I think it's really mixed. I think unlike September 11th or COVID, which were kind of force de jours that the nation had to respond to, this is completely self-inflicted. He got elected on the economy, on the premise that he would lower tariff, or that he would lower inflation, and that he would, like his first term, kind of create a positive environment for job growth and wage growth, which he did achieve in his first term. I think that the jury is out, as we've said. If by this time next year things are looking positive, he'll deserve a ton of credit. On the other hand, I think in the short run, it's going to get very bumpy. And the question is just, can he land the plane in pretty difficult conditions?
Sean, how's the plane looking?
I think the plane's looking very nice. I mean, Dan mentioned the president got elected on inflation. So let's take Dan at his word. Prescription drug prices down 2%. Energy prices down 2%. Egg prices down 50%. February inflation down. CPI looks great. I mean, so if you want to judge him by that yardstick, let's go. I'm all for it. I think the president, when you look at jobs, last month, 345,000 jobs. The labor force participation rate is up 0.7. So, again, it goes back to not just the government statistics, but how people feel. And I walked over to the supermarket yesterday evening to get something. I'm walking back, look up at the price of a gallon of gas, $2.99 for whatever it was, 87. So I guess, not just the statistics, because I've always maintained that statistics aren't what people see, read, and hear, but, whether you're looking at those things or actually going into the supermarket, you're seeing the prices of eggs, you're going to fill up your car. If that's the yardstick that the president is being judged by, and that's why I think, again, I go back to that Frank Luntz interview I played at my show yesterday. People were basically saying, look, I'm riding this thing out. I'm seeing it. It was 20 people, so it's not like statistically significant. But at the end of the day, I think there is a disconnect what people in the media that are hanging out in Bethesda, Maryland versus real America are feeling and dealing with. And I'm not saying that there are not some problems here and there, but I'm saying that the sort of the alarm bells that folks in the media have going off are not consistent with what most everyday Americans are feeling when they walk into a store.
Oh, that is absolutely not true. I mean, every single economic survey, consumer confidence is going like a ski slope down. So the base is still with him. And
my dog
that is the only saving grace.
My dog did not agree with you.
Well, I will just go. I mean, that sounds like the Joe Biden people 3 years ago, what you just said. So I mean, we will see if he is able to do this. But to say, look, John, to say that inflation is going down when everyone is saying we're about to start raising our prices, that's where Democrats just sit back and say, keep putting that, because that was the Biden mistake, that they kind of jumped out in front when everyone saw inflation starting to go north. You got eggs down and energy goes up and down like a ping pong ball. It just does. So we'll see.
I'll because of peace, love, and understanding, I'm going to ignore Sean's disparagement of Bethesda, Maryland, the town I grew up in. It did put me largely out of touch with the American people, which is why I left. Thank you for joining. If you want to be in the conversation, please raise your hand. This is the morning meeting modeled on the television network, network news division morning meetings, where we'll talk about what's going on today and then ask you for your participation here. Thank you for being part of Two Way. On the messaging front, on the economy, interesting memo from Ian Sams, who's got a new organization that is, he's working with Mitch Landrieu on trying to figure out how the Democratic Party can be a working class party again. Dan, tell people who Ian is who don't know.
Yeah, he was one of Barack Obama's lead focus group architects and is incredibly well respected within the party. And these kind of weekly emails have been, must read for those who are trying to understand what's going on and how the party is seen. And as he said, if you want to know how the Democrats can get out of this hole, you have to take a look at Republicans and why they've been successful.
Yeah, and you got to be honest.
Yep.
One of the things that I think both parties can suffer from, and you're seeing it now with Republicans regarding the president's poll numbers, is pretending things that are happening are not happening, or vice versa. And what's striking about this Ian Sams memo, which is contrasted from the American Bridge press release and from Dan Pfeiffer's usual misses, is they did some actual research and they talked to working class voters. And as you can see here, the working class voters largely side with Donald Trump. And again, honest people can say, yes, the president's poll numbers are down, but also all the data, recent data shows the Democrats are not in great shape too. So Donald Trump is reigning as the one-eyed man because the Democrats are having so much trouble. So working class voters see Republicans as strong with a known agenda, Democrats weak and ineffective, Republican brand connected to the economy. Working class voters see Trump and the Republicans focused on it. Trump is seen as taking decisive action. Trump is working class voters say identify more with Republicans culturally and see them as less judgmental. And then one point of caution for the Republicans, again, from Democratic research, is perception that Republicans are out for the rich. So, Sean, I know this neither disappoints nor surprises you, but what could
Well, no,
Democrats who read this do about it?
Well, so the funny part is it is, I mean, I will say that it is surprising in the sense that I will give Ian Sams and his team some credit here. I think that like you can stick your head in the sand as American Bridge did and try to just do the opposite. I mean, what Dan described is, at some point you have to be real about your party. And we did that after 2012 in the Republican Party, where some people weren't excited about airing our dirty laundry. But the reality is that if you actually want to fix the problem, you have to be willing to admit there is a problem and then focus on it. So I will give Ian and his group some credit for being honest about where the lay of the land is. And that's kind of what I was just saying. I mean, the people believe, and this is what that Luntz focus group showed, that people believe that President Trump is out there fighting for them. I've said this over and over again for the last several months. The easy political thing for President Trump to do, if all he cared about was his ego and his poll numbers, he would do nothing. Doge is good for America, good for the government in terms of how it operates. It's not good politically. And some of these things. So I think that this is the big shift that's happening right now. And again, I think that here, to answer your question, bottom line, smart Democrats would say, okay, I don't necessarily like what's happening, but I'll heed the advice of what Ian Sams and his team is putting out there. If you want to put your head in the sand and say that that's not true, God bless you. Keep going. But
yeah, Dan, forget about the medium and the long term. Today, as Democrats are asked to weigh in on the first 100 days, if you're applying the research that Ian Sams is sharing here, how would you talk about the first 100 days?
Well, I think the thing is, and this goes to what Sean was saying, is the working class is rooting for Trump. They trust Trump. Now, there's a danger because once that trust is broken, it's really hard to get it back. But I think this is where if things turn around in the next 6 to 9 months, it's going to be to Trump's benefit because people are kind of like, he's fighting for us. I trust him. I think for us, the key is we can criticize Trump and hold him accountable. That is appropriate being in the minority. But we have to start offering alternatives at some point. Because if we want to be seen as strong, if we want to be seen as caring about people like you can't just say he sucks. You have to offer somebody a reason to be like, okay, I trust you. I'm going to get behind you. I'm going to stand in line for you, etc. So I think we have got to come up with an economic agenda and frankly, a cultural agenda that connects with people.
Is there something for both of you? Is there something today that a Democrat could say that you know of that's floating out there as a policy idea to say Donald Trump's for X and our party's for Y that would appeal to the working class?
I don't know. To me, it's not obvious right this minute. But I think there are, and I think people, this is where we all disagreed last week. I think Rahm saying, I am trying to figure out kind of if there's a theory of the case to present to the American people. I think smart politicians are doing that. You could be J.B. Pritzker, and we're going to get to this, and criticize and get everyone off their feet about how awful Trump is. Somebody is going to emerge to say, no, get behind me. Here's what we're going to charge him before.
Right. And that's the way that you thread the needle matters in this. Yep. And the one thing I will say is that where Democrats miss sometimes is that largely the hit on Trump has been stylistic, right? You think about the first term, it's people like the policies, but I don't like the name calling. I don't like the tweets. And then the problem is that, but what I have always argued to folks is there's no perfect person out there, right? What would you rather have? The person that speaks just with the most grandiose, verbose talking points and makes you feel good and does nothing, which we have been fed up for decades? Or would you rather have somebody who actually gets stuff done, but
Yeah.
you don't agree with everything. And where the Democrats miss this is that they talk about the style, but then they can't pivot to the policy. And that's the fundamental
But
problem.
here's what's confusing to me. There's all these issues Trump has taken positions on, just on the economy. Let's not talk about due process or all this other stuff. Just in the economy. Trump's taken a million positions. Okay. Democrats on tariffs, they say, well, we like tariffs too, but we don't like the way Trump's done tariffs. That seems very wishy-washy, not a big contrast. Is there no issue on which either of you can name on economics where the Democrats can say Trump is weak, Trump is wrong, we are strong and right on this economic issue? Is there no such issue?
I mean, I just fully candid. I mean, if I sat around and thought about it for a few weeks, I'm sure I could come up with stuff. But I mean,
that's what Eisenhower said when he was asked what Nixon had done as vice president.
But Mark, this is what we've said now, or at least I've said now for the last 3 months, for the first 100 days. We have no leader and we have no agenda, right? I mean, that is our problem.
But I just find it puzzling. The Democrats think Trump is a disaster on the economy. The voters are having increasing doubts about it. And there's not one thing.
But Mark, this goes back to my point. It's stylistic. Their issues with Trump are style.
Well, no,
they think he favors the wealthy. They think that the tariffs are going to cause inflation. I mean,
right. Yeah.
They have substantive economic objections to Trump's policies. I just don't hear
Mark,
a single.
You know what they don't object to? They don't object to Trump's goals. Reshoring, opening new, like nobody's against that. To Sean's point, it's how he's trying to.
They are in favor of the wealthiest in corporations paying more in taxes.
That is not true within the base is in favor of that. There are a lot of, if you look at where Democrats are now clustered, it is in urban centers along the coast. Those people are not in favor of that. I mean, this is where the party has to have an honest conversation about who we represent right now, right? We are more the white collar than the blue collar. Now that's a problem, but you can't fire your existing customer base in the effort to get new customers.
The fundamental problem is twofold for the Democratic Party. Number one, you become the completely urban party. Yep. The people that you represent are in cities, New York, LA,
and suburbs, kind of those collar suburbs a little bit. Yep.
But you do represent the rich right now. That's who you represent, the billionaires, the Hollywood.
College educated, I would say. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And the problem is that you've lost the unions because you've kept the union leadership, but the men and women out there working with their hands in the trades, the pipe fitters, the plumbers, these folks culturally are not with the Democratic Party anymore. And this is the fundamental disconnect, because these are people who you talk about taking away their guns. You talk about, minimizing their faith and religious reasons and culture and family and stuff. And so there's a disconnect where the Democratic Party is right now. It used to be this patchwork of constituencies, gays, young black men and women. And it was never an overarching philosophical, ideological thing. What the Democratic Party has become in the last decade is a patchwork, a quilt of random constituencies that just are marginalized according to the party. And that's it. There's no through line.
Yeah. All right. Raise your hand if you want to get in on the conversation, please. Either of you see any forward-looking fallout from the Canadian elections that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, gosh, no.
I think the only thing is Canada seems to be going through a moment of national pride and does not seem to want to cut a deal. Like, I think right now it'd be very hard if you're a Canadian to be like, all right, this deal's not great for us, but it gets the tariffs down. I think they're all like, it's us against them.
But I will tell you, I think, say what you will about Justin Trudeau. I got to know him a little during his tenure. And he was a much better politician than Carney. And I think that Carney, we'll see how this guy does. I have a feeling that Trump is going to eat him up and spit him out. And so I almost think
pretty tough banker.
Yeah.
Huh?
He's a tough banker. He's no dummy.
The people in Trump's life who stood up to him the most often are bankers.
Well, but I will say this.
All politics is local.
Yeah.
I don't think that you're going to see a ton of time spent on this. And I'm not really sure. I saw Carney, excerpts of Carney's speech last night. I'm not sure that this was the smart way to come out of the gate.
Yeah.
You might rally the Canadian people behind you for a moment, but at the end of the day, what's the old saying
But those are your voters.
no, I get it, but what was when the U.S. gets a cold or sneezes, Canada gets
Yeah.
a cold.
I thought he was pretty good last night. All right, real quick.
No, I'm not saying he wasn't good. Don't get me wrong.
No, I know. Just
rallied the people, but he's
your quick
pissing off
updates.
Trump.
Quick updates, one sentence each. Quick update.
Quick.
Here we go. One sentence each.
Mhm.
Dan, set the example. Ukraine, Russia. Where are we?
Putin.
Just waiting on Putin.
Yep.
Sean, where are we on Ukraine, Russia?
Incremental progress.
We're waiting for Trump to give Putin an ultimatum. Dan, where are we on reconciliation?
How are those cuts looking? They got to come up with them. Now the rubber meets the road. Got to put pen to paper.
Yeah. Sean, where are we on reconciliation?
Incremental progress.
Dan is again correct. We're waiting to see if they can figure out how to cut enough to satisfy in the Senate and the House the deficit hawks. And I don't know how they're going to do that. The chances of reconciliation passing, there's a semicolon, the chances of reconciliation passing have gone down a little bit in my mind. Dan, where are we on tariffs?
How do we declare victory and get out?
Sean.
Incremental progress.
I
think, look, if you listen to what Bessent said, I mean, if they can strike, what he said this morning was very telling, and it's consistent with what I've been like. They want to create a couple frameworks going forward, and then the rest will start to fall in.
But what is a framework? It means nothing.
It means you can take the tariffs off.
Right.
That's exactly it. And then spend 2 years and it'll fold.
Oh,
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how he talks about it in Michigan today in light of the Wall Street Journal report matched by the New York Times and others that they're going to make a bunch of exceptions for autos and auto parts.
And I bet they're going to be a lot more exemptions.
Yes, the exemptions. Trump will make no exemptions and no exceptions except when he does. All right. So Governor Pritzker is having a second day ride. He did an MSNBC interview and he's getting a lot of positive buzz. So, Sean, if you worked for a Democratic presidential hopeful who said to you, hey, Governor Pritzker gives one speech and he gets like this 2-day thing, what can I do? What are some things that other Democrats could do to have their own, what I call now, a Pritzker moment?
I think you have to figure out one thing that we've said all along is that it has to be authentic. I think when JB Pritzker speaks, it actually feels like he means it. And so I think part of it is figuring out what's authentic for that candidate. I think these sit-ins and sing-alongs are ridiculous. They are really beneath. I mean, it's pathetic but I think part of this is these guys have to figure out their moments coming on there. They have to show that there's willing to be a fight. I think part of it is figuring out you. For Gavin, I think this podcast thing is just, I don't know. I feel like they're all out there in the wilderness trying to, part of the problem, Mark, is that too often I feel like these guys are like letting consultants telling them what to do. And that's the problem, is that they're like, what should I do to look tough?
Yeah.
Dan, how do you get a Pritzker moment?
Yeah. So, I mean, I actually agree a little bit with Sean. So I think there's 3 things. We are leaderless and there's a vacuum, right? So JB has decided to step forward. The old playbook, if you were going to run for president, was in the 4 years out. It was called the shadow primary. You tried to get donors, you tried to get staff, and you tried to get local endorsements, right? But you stayed out of the headlines. You formed a leadership pack. You said, I'm going to delay this. I'm all about the midterms. In a vacuum, in a party that is desperate for leadership, to get a moment, you step forward. Now, to Sean's point, you have to be authentic. And JB, for the last 2 years, has been full throttle. He was part of the comparing Trump to Nazi Germany, about democracy during the 2024 campaign. So for JB, this is kind of a natural progression. There's no alternative agenda. It is just he's terrible and scratching an itch within the party. If you want to have a moment, step forward with who you are on issues or on terrain that you are comfortable with, that is in your wheelhouse, and don't back down. So it can be on policy, it could be on style, but JB has made the decision, and I go back to that State of the State address, which if you read it is like, whoa, it is aggressive against Trump.
Right. So
Well, I
I'll
think
give you,
part of it is you got to figure out a way to take him on. Like
yeah,
Yep.
try to have that mono
yeah,
e mono moment where you're like, I'm going to tell Trump this, or
yep,
because you need to look like you're on equal footing with the guy. And
yep.
I don't, I
Yep.
mean,
You guys did some broad message things. I'll give you four tactical things that the Pritzker folks did that I think are part of getting the moment. First of all, New Hampshire, right? If he'd given that speech in another place, it wouldn't have gotten as much attention because New Hampshire, even though the Democrats have downgraded it, it's still New Hampshire. Second, they obviously courted the national press. They had a lot of national press travel for that speech. And if you
And he
travel,
did Fox News the weekend
yeah,
before,
yeah,
like he was.
yeah. If you travel for the speech, if a reporter travels, they're going to write a piece. Whereas if you just let them watch it on TV, or if you did it in a place you couldn't get them to go. Number two. Number three, his chief of staff was quoted on the record in at least one piece that I saw. And that's required, right? Because that sends a signal. This operation is focused. It's not just the potential candidate kind of dabbling. It's like there's an operation here. And then lastly, he's making it clear. The trajectory is he's doing it. He's not acting ambivalent. And reporters and news organizations feel more comfortable covering it like a presidential thing if the person's really in, as opposed to seemingly ambivalent.
Yep. Yep. And look, when he was in town for the NGA and the DGA, he was all over the place.
He worked it. He worked
He
it.
did. I
He
mean,
worked it.
he's going.
Yeah, and the other thing is self-funding, which obviously not everybody can do. But the reality is it's one of the few things that reporters emphasize that's not crap, which is you have to have the money.
Yep.
You have to have the money. And some of these people who look good on paper, when they go, it's like going from double A to the major leagues and you can't hit a curveball. Going from raising money as a governor or a senator or a House member to raising money as a presidential candidate, it is unforgiving and relentless. And I've talked before about how a lot of these candidates, prospective candidates, they're not part of the national conversation for years and years. They don't have the networks required to raise tens of millions of dollars in a short period of time. And so Pritzker short circuits that because if he wants to write a check, at least for a lot of it, he can.
And look, who are the two candidates that have gotten attention? AOC Bernie Sanders, I'll count them as one, and JB Pritzker. What do they have in common? They are getting out. They are full throttle. Now, I don't love some of what they're saying, but if you're thinking of running for president, that old playbook isn't going to work anymore. You have to get out and say something.
All right. Sean, you want to say anything else?
no, no.
Just Dan's right. That's okay. Move on.
You can sit down. Right. All right. Speaking of being right, we're going to go to your questions now. Again, if you want to be in on the
Can I make
conversation.
one,
Yes,
one
sir.
comment, Mark?
Yes,
Before
yes, sir.
so I do want to revise and extend because yeah, I just want to make sure before we touch on this, I will give the White House a ton of credit, having been part of a 100-day effort, both on both sides. Counter when I was at the RNC for 2 cycles, and then during the Trump first 100 days, like what they've done, not just briefing wise. You saw the memos out today. There's a great 23-page. They got the economic memo that we referenced earlier ago, but they've put out a 23-page promises made, promises kept document that's very interesting in the breadth and depth that it covers of issues that the president has addressed. They put out a lot of digital assets. They've really swamped. There was a lot of local media at the White House this yesterday, local affiliates in the Rose Garden. The bracketing effort to really tell the story about what's happening is full force. And when we talk about this, it's not just that the president's going to Michigan or they sending out some talking points. Like they have really flooded the zone on this, and this is.
Mark, would you say
you're seeing it
best?
just say you're seeing it also in the texting and email, social media of all the members of Congress and Republican governors. They're all out
Well,
there
that's
saying,
why I'm going to ask Mark: is this the best comms operate that I've seen in my lifetime? That they are so modern, nimble, and aggressive. It's better than I think. I mean, it was a different era, but it seems to me to be the best.
It's a little hard apples to oranges. I will say that they have about, I'd say, a dozen people, half on the inside, half on the outside, who are extraordinarily modern and sophisticated about this. And of course, the president has it as a top priority. So they all know that there's no amount of time they could spend on it that would be considered a waste. Interesting. And then we're going to get to Mr. Aaron Homer in a moment. Interesting. Punchbowl reported earlier, as we said, and the White House has responded negatively, that Amazon plans to display the part of the price that comes from tariffs. Thank you. Walmart now is being reported by Axios is expanding its support for American-made products through no programs to help small businesses. So today you can bet that the White House will be celebrating Walmart. Caroline Levitt tweeted this out already a few minutes ago, and attacking Amazon. It's an interesting dichotomy of one company happens to be based in a blue state and one company that happens to be based in a red state. Aaron, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two Way. Tell us about your cap, where you are, and what's on your mind.
Hey, guys. First time, long time. Enjoy the show.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Coming from Houston, Texas. The cap is, don't get too excited. Yes, I went there. No, I'm not a super fan.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. One for Dan, one for Sean. Dan, I guess Putin, on the topic of Putin, and some of your comments yesterday about, or for a while, about the relative treatment of Putin versus Zelensky. What action, what rhetoric, what you said, not sanctions, what weapon system, what would you like to do to put pressure on Putin? What do you think would move the needle in a negotiation? What weapon system? What do you got?
I think what you have to say, look, what does he want? He wants Ukraine. So I think what you have to say to him is, look, a lot of people have died. We've been at this for years. You've taken 20% of Ukraine. You're going to keep that, right? Like, they're going to give it up, Ukraine, Zelensky, like, you're just going to have to swallow it. But you will not take more land, and we are going to arm the European peacekeepers with sophisticated, logistical support and whatever, the rocket launchers and like all the things, so that he knows that we're there, right? Like as a backstop with our weaponry, which has proved superior. Like, all they have are bodies, right? Their weaponry is terrible. They have drones, but like, that's about it. So I think if they know the trench line can't be moved, then it's like, we're going to stop this now. But I think because we won't say that, Putin, look, if we take our marbles and go home, he wins. So, because then Ukraine will fall.
I think the pushback I found, this is not, this is a very conventional war where they're in trenches with FPV drones. Like, there is no sophisticated Patriot missile system, stealth aircraft. There's literally nothing we could give them that would alter the nature of that conflict. Trenches with FPV drones. Right. Like, we're not a trench with an FPV drone army is what, that's just not the conflict we're engineered to fight.
We are a little bit. We are. We're trying to pivot toward a war with China, but we're still designed to fight the wars in the plains of Europe.
That is the war we're designed to fight, is a long distance, high tech, long range missile warfare. That doesn't, I just don't see anything. We have given them Patriot missiles. We've given them ATACMS. I don't know if we've given them JASMs or not, but we've given them a lot of sophisticated weapons, and it hasn't moved the needle on that conflict because that's not the conflict that they're fighting.
Well, but Aaron, that's not true, because they didn't take the rest of Ukraine because we provided that. The reason it's been a trench, look, the Ukrainians don't have this weaponry. They have bodies.
I understand that. They don't have that many of the bodies. But anyway, I just don't know that there is, I guess,
all right, Aaron,
in the interest of time.
Yeah, Aaron, I love the conversation. Your question for Sean, though, please.
Kind of a similar question. Sean, I bet you and I would agree on 99% of your comments on, China and TikTok and all of that. I guess you go a step further. You think there's some great military threat to me, and if we don't do X, onshore, and I don't remember what the X was, onshore some technology, onshore some production, get rid of TikTok. We're going to be speaking Mandarin.
Yes.
And I just don't, I am personally at a very low risk of learning Mandarin.
Okay.
So I
hope you have money to buy it. Hope you have money to fund a translator then.
Google Translate. Like, Google Translate works very well.
I strongly believe that the Chinese are not coming here.
Okay.
Well, what is the basis for you thinking that they're that kind of a threat?
What they say. They've made it very clear that this isn't like a guess.
They say they're coming to America.
When the chief of naval op, go read the 100-Year War by Michael Pillsbury. They don't hide it. The Belt and Road Initiatives. I mean, they don't seek. It's not just the U.S. They seek world domination. It's not just the U.S. that they're coming for, or like New Mexico. They want the world. So if you don't believe them, and so let's just say, let's play this out for a second, Aaron. I hope to God that I am so wrong. If there's anything that I'm wrong about, it's the threat that they pose to us. But in the same reason that I lock my doors at night, that I have an alarm system, that I put money in a bank, it's because I'd rather be smart and safe than stupid. And right now, the idea of having a deterrence against China, to me, is the smartest money that we can spend, making sure that we protect our country and our allies and our assets. So I would rather be wrong and smart and safe than look in 4 years and be trying to figure out how to say, where's the bathroom in Mandarin.
Aaron, one response, and then we got to move on. But I'm grateful to you for.
You're good. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, Aaron. Thank you. Thank you for how'd you become part of Two-Way?
Oh, the YouTube algorithm many months ago.
Okay. Thank you for being part of it. Tell all your friends. Bet. We need more coverage. We need more coverage in Houston. Aaron's neighbor, Ted Cruz, will be my guest coming up.
Oh, look at that segue.
On the premiere episode
Aaron, are you
of Next
in the Woodlands by chance?
I already muted.
By the way, Mark, where are you on the Apple rankings? Not even having produced a show yet, but where are you?
Too modest to check, but I won't call. We call him Robin.
I've heard rumors you are top 5 already.
Top 5 amongst news podcasts, yes.
And in total,
not a rumor.
25.
Top 30. Top 30. But thank you for asking. Again, that'll drop later today. We'll talk more about that at the end. Robin, welcome in. Thank you for being part of Two-Way. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
I'm in Westchester County, New York. I love the show. You guys are great. You're doing some really important work from the political perspective, showing both sides of the aisle. But today I have a quick comment, hopefully. I want to get all of your reactions, but Dan, particularly yours, since you are the Democrat who seems to have, the whisperer has maybe the ear of certain people. The comments related to J.B. Pritzker, particularly as it relates to the 2028, there's been a lot of conversation about him and a lot of the far left progressive. One of the things certainly that came about besides immigration, the last election, was the issue related to transgender. And but one of the things that doesn't come up, particularly with Pritzker, is his connection to the from a financial perspective. His family is heavily entrenched in the gender affirming community. They have money ties, and the family itself goes back dark money way to the beginning, 2008, when Barack Obama, Penny Pritzker funded his campaign. And that is the first time you start to see the verbiage, particularly in the Affordable Care Act, of gender affirming care. But it had really little to do with ideology and mostly financial gain. So my question to you is, this is going to come out. I'm sure Sean will tell you any Republican strategist worth their salt is going to attack him, because moderate Democrats, women, mothers, it wasn't discussed enough.
Robin, sorry to interrupt. How are they making money off of it?
They fund if they're Jennifer Bilek, who's an independent reporter. She's been doing this reporting for years, and she talks about their investment in the clinics. And behind the scenes, they fund it. Yeah. If you look up Jennifer Bilek, who by the way used to be a liberal journalist.
Yeah, but you're saying the Pritzkers have a profit motive?
Oh yes, absolutely. They are funding these clinics.
I find it hard to believe they're going to make enough money to even notice, given how rich they are. But let me ask Dan what he knows about this, and then Sean. Dan.
So that is the first that I've heard that the Pritzkers have a financial stake. I mean, look, the family founded Hyatt Hotels 100 and some odd years ago. They're one of the oldest U.S. real estate families in the country. Each kid is worth billions of dollars. I imagine they have very broad investments that will pose some thorny sides and conflicts, just as our current president has a very broad investment portfolio while sitting as president even. So I don't know about that. But what I will say is on the cultural issues, he has planted his flag, proudly saying that we need to defend certain values. I think this will, whether it's JB or others, this is going to be litigated within the Democratic primary for 2028. You have Gavin Newsom saying we might have made it, gone too far. We're going to have people who say, no, we haven't. Tim Walz has also, by the way, been kind of speaking in a similar manner. So I think this is going to be debated. It should. And this is how hopefully we'll get a good outcome, is having a good old, airing of the family differences.
Sean.
Robin, are you referring, so the only thing that's coming to mind as you're talking about this is that there is I've heard it discussed previously that when people get looped into all this gender affirming care, it's a huge payoff for pharmaceuticals because they get hooked on the drugs that they then can't undo.
Absolutely.
So yes, is that what you're referring to?
That, the gender clinics, I mean, I'm sure you guys, if you found out now, Planned Parenthood has now become the biggest purveyor of testosterone. They are actually the ones who give testosterone. This is a big issue for women who believe in the sex-based rights of women and girls. And it's done independently. It's not talked about enough in the mainstream media. Karadansky on Substack talks about it, but they don't get the airtime with the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, very little bit. Jamie Reed, who was the whistleblower, she got some coverage on this. But it's a big deal, and it's gonna come out in the general election, whoever becomes a Democratic nominee. And I think it's gonna be a much bigger deal than the Democrats who are in power understand. I think it was the tip of the iceberg with the ad in November, and it's gonna be a problem.
Robin, do you think it'll be a big deal if we're in a deep recession by the time of the election?
I don't know if we're going to be in a deep recession, but yes, to your point, probably not. But if the economy is humming along,
yeah, Robin, I have many nicknames. My main nickname is King of the Hypothetical. Robin, thank you for joining. We're grateful to have you be part of it. We appreciate the topic. We'll all educate ourselves a little more as we sift through our over the transom Pritzker opposition research packets that we haven't opened yet, but we will. Mr. Becker, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Unmute, please. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind.
Yeah, I'm in Dallas, Texas. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a Texas day.
So, I mean, firstly, I'd love to get y'all down here. I think you'd have a very, very warm reception. But my question is for Sean. I find this, I live in a community where people are willing to criticize their college football team, their professional football team. They're willing to criticize their kid's school. They're basically willing to be, pretty much rational about anything.
And I'll say my experience with Texans, very willing to criticize both of the United States senators as well.
Yeah, I mean, essentially everything is fair game, and I mean this in a respectful way. They're willing to take a look at the good and the bad. With the exception of, and by the way, I'm a moderate Republican, with the exception of all of my, MAGA friends who are simply unwilling to criticize any aspect of the platform. And so, in the case of Trump, I'm in favor of, I would say, kind of the vast majority of the policies. I'm not happy necessarily with implementation, but I'm taken aback by an unwillingness to say, gee, I like most of the cabinet, but I don't like Hegseth, or, anything along those lines. And I just don't, it's very hard for me to foot the same individual who's willing to, there's nothing else sacred necessarily in their life. They might even say, gee, I love my church, but I don't necessarily like this pastor, or I didn't like that sermon. And I have a hard time getting my arms around that.
Stephen, before Sean answers, let me just ask you what is your theory about why your friends who are so MAGA won't do it? What is it? Psychological? Is it practical? Is it tactical? What would you say the
for a
reason
long
is?
time, I thought it was that they were entirely in an information bubble. But I've started listening to kind of a wide, like I'll listen to, Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro has gotten very critical of certain policies. I'll listen to All In. I listen to a variety of podcasts that, for a while really were tightly, All In's not a great example, were really, kind of tightly hewed to the MAGA party line. So I thought, gee, they're getting all of their information from one source, and that source isn't critical in any way, shape, or form. But now it seems like there is enough, kind of critical news flow out there.
So you don't have a theory?
I don't have a theory any longer.
Okay. Sean.
I think it's kind of like a family. So you can't criticize my family without attacking me, right? So if you want to go after some family member, you're basically coming after me, is how I would view that. But I can go after my family. I can say, because it's how you do it and how it's felt. So if we're having a family discussion, I say, guys, I just don't like this. The family doesn't look at it as an attack, but I think sometimes when you're on the outside and you said something about a family member, the entire family takes that as a hit, right? I think sometimes people view it the same way about their ethnicity, meaning that if you say, something about the Irish or whatever, but the MAGA team, I think if you are on the team, if you will, and you are privately discussing stuff internally, there's plenty of dissent, if you will, or critique, which is, oh, I wish that guy would do this or da da da. But I think that when there's an attack on one or all from the outside, somebody who we don't believe is in the family, we're going to defend the family. And I think because we don't believe that many people who are attacking the family do so from altruistic purposes. It's not like you're trying to improve it. I don't like Trump and da 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 da. And I think most of these people, I think we feel, many people in the MAGA movement feel like President Trump is fighting for the team, fighting for the family, and so we're going to defend him.
Sean, do you think it's at all unhealthy, this dynamic?
As I said, I think it would be like I said, when you get into small groups of MAGA folks and talk about particular tactics or messaging, there's plenty of opportunity for critique, but I think it's also how it's done. And it's the same way that I've said, President Trump, listen to Bill Maher the other day when he talked about his conversations with President Trump. And he said, I critiqued him on this, and he laughed and he was funny. Somebody asked me the other day, about criticizing Trump. And I said, you fundamentally don't understand it. If you go at somebody like a spider monkey and tell them that they're wrong and stupid, of course they're going to be reflexively defensive. But I've seen plenty of people give President Trump advice or tweak him and say, hey, I know what you're trying to accomplish here, but I think we could probably do it a little bit better. How they do it, the context they do it matters. And I just think that and the last thing I'll say on this is that if you are a true conservative, for the last 30 years, there has been a feeling of being under attack. Corporate America, Hollywood, academia has all been, we're wrong. We have to hide. We have to cower. We have to apologize for our beliefs. You have to use your pronouns, all this crap. And I think the idea of finally being able to stick up your head proud, put a hat on and say, I can be proud of who we are now is a very different feeling.
Stephen, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but let me just try to clarify something in my mind based on what you said and what Sean said. Steve Bannon will criticize Donald Trump. Elon will criticize Donald Trump. I think what Stephen might be referring to, and I think it's really important for our society, not our political discourse, is at a golf course, at a family function, at work, where we're not talking about people with media platforms, just regular MAGA people. They won't say, well, that guy shouldn't be in the cabinet, or the tariffs are going to ruin my business. They're just reflexively on message in a way that I think is unhealthy for any political organization. Stephen, do I have that right?
Yeah, you have that right. First of all, I would correct Sean in saying that all of my Irish Catholic friends are very quick to go after family members.
Yes, it's like their hobby.
But in a ribbing way. But with that said, no, that's really what I'm saying. I'm not talking about, look, publicly, I think you have to protect your party. But I'm just really surprised in casual conversations with my friends when I say, listen, I'm just using this as a hypothetical. Hegseth's become a distraction. He never had the qualifications. Compare him to, the last 5 people who've held the post. I've got, 2 nephews, one at the Naval Academy, one who's a Marine. this is concerning me. I don't understand why you don't replace him with a candidate who would have an official that have so much more, bona fides. And let's just take that off the table for the party and let them move on to other things.
Right.
And my friends wouldn't even entertain that.
And Stephen, in my experience, if I was at a conversation like that, what the MAGA people would say was, Joe Biden's Secretary of Defense, Austin, he went to the hospital and he had surgery and he didn't tell anybody. He's horrible. So would you rather have that rather than just saying what you just said, which is, you know what? I can understand how you feel that way, because if you've someone in the service, they may not love Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. One example, but I think it's a super important thing because it's not good for our society. And I would argue not good for the MAGA movement, but certainly not good for our society. Go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Oh, no, both party bases feel like if they give an inch, they'll lose a mile. And so that's the same reason.
That's true.
It's the same reason that the Democratic base will not admit anything is good that Trump does, right? It's just the same logic. And so I think, unfortunately, this is where the middle gets disgusted.
but I think, the left and Steve, I mean, look, first of all, I think this is a great conversation because I think it's truly what's happening. And I know some of the folks in the media and the left like to call this like whataboutism. But I pointed this out when Dennis McDonough, who had been Obama's chief of staff, was nominated for Secretary of Veterans Affairs. The guy had no military service. He had never been part of or associated with a veteran service organization. The VA gives out largely home loans. I don't know that he's ever been involved in that kind of lending at all. Medical services are another great piece of it. He has no experience in the healthcare. And yet no one was concerned about Dennis McDonough's bona fides to run the VA. When Pete Buttigieg, who had been mayor of South Bend, Indiana, that had a total of 66 buses as part of his public transportation, came up to run the Department of Transportation, and the hit against him, the one thing that Obama said is, I'm excited to have the first gay member of a cabinet, and he's also young. Those were his bona fides. No one said anything. So I think for some of us, we reflexively say, so now you care about qualifications? Now you wonder, I mean, and I think it's just for me, I don't know if you want to call it whataboutism, but I find that when the left does something, everybody excuses it. And when the right does it, that's when we should have this huge, family discussion and come to Jesus. I'm so tired of it not happening.
Sean, you're right. You're right. It should be called out in either party. Currently, I don't think you're seeing any shortage of Democrats, both publicly and in private conversations, being critical of the party. I mean, there's no shortage of that. I mean, so they're not currently having that problem. But I'll say again, if you don't want to show weakness, been criticized, it's like Stephen and I are talking about private conversations with friends. It's incredibly alienating to me. And again, I think troubling. And I'd say it about the other party, but right now it seems to be happening more on the right. It's incredibly troubling to have these conversations where it's like, you can't possibly think that. I understand you love most of MAGA, but you can't possibly be defending like Matt Gaetz as Attorney General or the impact that tariffs are having on a particular small business in your community.
Or owning a crypto company while you're sitting in the Oval Office. That is bonkers. Bonkers.
I guess the point is that like on the tariff issue, I'm not defending the impact that it has on a small business. I mean, I reckon.
Okay, let's forget the tariffs because it's not as clean an example. Takes Dan's last example. How could anyone possibly defend President Trump's buck raking?
I mean, owning a crypto company while you're, if I were running for a Democrat in 2028, I would say to my team, how can I make $5 or $6 billion in the first 100 days? Because that is what he did, promoting crypto. If Chelsea Clinton opened a members only club in Georgetown with a $500,000 initiation fee, and in the written pitch is that our rich cabinet secretaries will be there without the press. Seriously?
Yeah,
I mean that's effing believable.
Yeah,
and everyone just says,
no. I mean,
Sean's thought bubble is, can I get a discount on the membership?
Well, no, I've already thought about that one, but I can't believe a first son would grift off of that. I mean, can you imagine somebody just getting a free ride after grifting?
You guys still talk about it.
But Sean, again, you're doing exactly what people in MAGA do. Now you want to talk about Hunter.
I do. You're right, I do.
But we'll criticize Hunter all day long.
Yep.
But you didn't. But no one, not you. But
well, I did. Dan did.
Got a free ride, and no one.
Of course. Well, not no one. MAGA cared. Dan cared. I cared. A few honest people in the media cared. We're spending a lot of time on this, and Stephen, I couldn't be more grateful to you for raising it because it's a huge issue in our culture, and it's unhealthy. It's politically negative, and I feel bad for you, Stephen, because I share your alienation from it. I have someone who I talk to on a regular basis who every time Trump does something that he finds outrageous and he knows is outrageous on the merits, he says, "I'm so glad Kamala Harris lost." His view is everything is trumped by thank goodness Kamala Harris isn't president. And it's just there's not very good conversation because I don't really understand his view of the merits of these individual cases where he doesn't agree with the president. But that's his posture. Stephen, thank you. Grateful to you for coming on. Have a great day.
Absolutely.
All right.
Sean, you didn't buy any of Hunter's art?
I will say
that was unbelievable.
Sean, I want to double back on one thing, which is Terry Moran. The New York Post has a story today. I don't know if it's true. I love the New York Post, but it's not necessarily always true. It says it couldn't be David Muir because Trump hates him from the debate, and it couldn't be Stephanopoulos. Don't need to explain why. But there are plenty of other people at ABC. So you spent some time at the White House yesterday. I know you asked Caroline Levitt about it. Where are you in understanding why ABC put him up, and why the White House accepted Terry Moran?
I still don't get which way this went. Did ABC offer him up, or did the White House ask him? I didn't continue down. I mean, at some point, the question is how much currency did I want to spend getting to the bottom?
I understand, but as we like to say, speculate away.
Well, I have to believe that this. I know that there are some people who believe, and I understand why, that this was a potentially a White House ask. I believe that this is who ABC offered up because it was sort of milquetoast, that there was no previous interaction would have. But again, I think the president is as Caroline said to me yesterday, I think the president's just I'll take anybody on. Tell me who the next person is, and I'll take them on. I'll show you what I can do to them.
And Terry is smart. Maybe it's in the president's interest to have a smart, aggressive, hostile person ask him questions and swat him away.
Yeah, although I always feel like the problem with a lot of these news organizations is, the person with the editing pen, if you will, always gets the last thing. So they're never going to make their anchor look stupid. So
I will say it's very admirable Trump sits with anybody. I honestly think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the problem I have is, and again, I believe that they should let everybody in. They should give everyone a shot. But I don't believe in rewarding bad behavior. Yeah. And so this morning, again, I understand what Caroline's doing. I give her a lot of credit for how she has handled this new media seat, because it's funny how they keep talking about all these MAGA people who sat in the seat, like Mike Allen from Axios, who couldn't be further from the truth. Right. Mark's straight as an arrow. He sat in the seat. Semaphore has been there. This morning, it was the team from Punch Bowl, which is another left-wing organization. So, but again, I get a kick out of the fact that no matter what they do, and no matter how many overtures they make to the left-wing legacy media, they still get branded as MAGA-friendly media. Yes. This gets back to Stephen's question. It's like no matter what we do, that's part of the reflexive nature, I think, that exists within MAGA. It's like you give an inch, Dan brought this up, and you never, ever get any credit for it. So screw it.
Yeah. All right, Sean, what do you have on your show tonight?
So yesterday, a lot of interviews. We're going to play a bunch of them today. We have Kalen Dorr on, who used to work for me. He's in the comm shop. He put a lot of this together. And so we go over a lot of what the messaging and the semantics and the logistics have, which it's sort of an inside baseball to me. Ron Viatella, who is the senior advisor for Immigration, Customs, and Border, will be on. Seb Gorka is going to be on. And then we've got a few others that we're going to be rolling out as well, but some great conversation and some great analysis of what's happening.
Okay, real quick from me, a bunch of logistical things. That sounds awesome. I agree. First of all, last night we had Adam Mockler on. He was the guest for the full hour on Two Way Tonight. And I heard from a bunch of you who said, "Why are you having this left-wing guy on? It's so ridiculous." Folks, learn. Opportunity to learn from someone who's very bright, who doesn't agree with you. He's not far left by his own description. He's center left. But please, there are plenty of MAGA voices on this platform. Plenty. If we spend some time with someone who has got a different perspective, send me a thank you note for allowing you exposure. Don't send me emails and texts or go on social complaining. That's not what the platform is. Tonight, for instance, Kristen Davison, a Republican, is on. We'll probably add another guest or two, but Kristen's on. She's excellent. If you're a Democrat, opportunity to learn what a thoughtful Republican is thinking. At 6 o'clock tonight, that is that. 7 o'clock tonight, the Moynihan Report. Michael Moynihan's guest, Will Creeley, who runs FIRE, the sponsor of the program, and an extraordinarily bright and articulate man, the legal director. Everything you want to know about free speech, but we're afraid to ask. Will Creeley will tell you how free speech works in this country, where the threats are, and what FIRE is doing to address it. 7 o'clock tonight. Later today, it'll drop at a time TBD, as podcasts do, on YouTube and on podcast platforms. Will be the premiere episode of my new program called Next Up. My guest, Senator Ted Cruz. I'll have a conversation with Mark Caputo of Axios and with Emma Jo Morris. And I would love for you to listen. And if you haven't already, please go to the YouTube channel or one of the podcast platforms and like or subscribe. As Dan has already told you, it's already moved up the charts very high. I don't want to sink when the program actually begins. So please.
Look at Paul. Paul, I'm going to mispronounce your last name. His backdrop is your show.
Very nice. All right. Lastly, thank you for participating and sending in questions for the People's Poll. Apologies for putting in my Substack the wrong email address. Nonetheless, we still got many input potential questions. We'll let those of you whose questions were chosen know. We'll have the poll on Thursday. Thank you for participating. And a reminder, if you would like to sponsor this program or any other program on Two-Way, send us an email. And this will show you the correct email address that Paul's about to put up. Become a sponsor. Sponsors at twoway.tv, not .com. Sponsors. And if you'd like to be part of our Closing Now Series A fundraising investment for being part of Two-Way, there are a few slots left. Send an email to invest@twoway.tv. Please include a range of the kind of amount of money you'd like to consider investing. Thank you very much for supporting Two-Way. Thank you for watching.
Just so you know, if you don't have enough for Two-Way, you're always welcome to Venmo me just whatever you have.
Whatever spare chain you have around. Thank you for watching.
No amount is too little.
Thank you for being part of Two-Way. I will see you at 6, and I'll see you at Next Up, and all of us will see you in 23 hours tomorrow. Have a great day.
Good luck, Mark.
Thank you.
You too, Sean.